Good evening, I'm Tim, he's Armin. This is Watches Tonight. We got Garrett and Ethan on the switcher this evening. It's gonna be a banger. We've got the great gold watch meltdown of 2025, which is well underway. And I share that ick, Armin. I think ick as well. We're also talking about advancing in your life as a watch collector, going from beginner to intermediate to advanced, and why I believe very, very few people reach the level of advance in the meantime. Follow my Instagram at Tim_Masso. That's what it looks like. You can see some insights into the world of Tim. Armand, you've got Instagram. What's your Instagram?
I do. It's me, Armand, and that's ARMAND.
Follow him, because his stuff's going to be more exciting than mine. You know I'm just going to post pugs and watches. All right, viewer wrist shots number one. Dr. D is flying to Chicago with the Devatune DB3 dual-time power reserve. Sarab P scores with the 2025 Rolex Land Dweller. He is of the elect while dwelling on land. That is truth in advertising, a rarity for watch names. Matt R wins the day with his Audi and his Vacheron Constantin Saltarello Jump Hour Retrograde. We've got Ted L, a former collector conversation. He's an alumnus. Now he's on your screen with his 1916 purchased MB&F Legacy Machine Perpetual Evo. Thank you for trusting our company, Ted. Eric of Utah owns all with the Lange Zeitwerk. We have Tack and Russell, who take El Leroy and Vacheron out for Night on the Town in London. Jimmy Y and Sean meet a familiar face at the 1916 Company's Scottsdale Watch Fair. Armand, you know where this is going. The meltdown of 2025, what are we talking about?
We are talking about the meteoric rise in gold prices in 2025. You know, I think we started this year, gold was about $2,600 an ounce, and we are looking right at about $4,000 an ounce right now. And Tim, atrocities are being committed when it comes to jewelry and watch bracelets.
Their horological war criminals are among us even now. So let me just be clear. Have you ever wondered why there are so many disembodied pocket watch movements and dials floating around on eBay without cases? It's not a new phenomenon. We're now in a new era of meltdown as scrap merchants once again come for our gold watches, but this time it's wristwatches in the crosshairs. After the 19th century gold rushes by hands-on prospectors, the temptation, we're going to look at this chart here, to buy or sell raw gold actually stayed fairly static for a long time in the 20th century after a quick jump when gold and the US dollar were pegged to about $35 per troy ounce. It stayed pretty stable until the early 70s when Richard Nixon took our currency off the gold standard. And since then, we have had regular spikes of uncertainty, economic malaise, and inflation that have witnessed several eras of watch meltdowns. Now, to be fair, jewelry and other gold goods are subject, but this is a wristwatch channel. You could see this is happening on a regular basis and never more than today.
Never more than today. And you know, in terms of the jewelry aspect, I hold it very close to heart because what we're seeing happening now are handcrafted bracelets. And I mean, watch bracelets that are handcrafted by jewelers being melted down, and that is an absolute bummer. And beyond just watches, the artisanal jewelry that will be lost through all this is really something sad, honestly.
And it bothers me a great deal because, first of all, gold is not that great an investment. Actually, if you look at that chart and you go back to the 1980s, we've only recently matched the inflation-adjusted value of gold from the early 1980s. So if you bought in that 80s inflation spike you see there between 1980 and 90, you would only just have broken even with inflation factored in. We will never get those watches back. Even as it took you decades to get your investment back, we will never, as a society, get those watches and articles of handmade jewelry back.
That's very true. And I think a lot of times, you know, we look at mass-produced bracelets, whether it's, you know, something, a solid gold Seamaster on a bracelet, for example, that is different than a handcrafted Cartier CPCP bracelet. That is different from a Patek Philippe golden ellipse bracelet that, again, a jeweler meticulously formed by hand.
And we're seeing a lot of this because many of the watches being melted down now, they're actually things from the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. They had very idiosyncratic style. So if we jump forward, let's just talk about Gordon Gekko, right? Gordon Gekko. He wore a very dainty, full gold, full bracelet watch, which was fashionable in his day. But think about what else was fashionable in his day. Quartz, ladies' watches, dated 70s to 90s styles. Those are in particular danger. Now look at that. That is co-molded yellow and rose gold on a JLC Odysseus perpetual calendar. There is zero doubt today that somebody would look at that bracelet and clasp, throw the watch on a strap, and send the rest to the smelter.
Without a doubt. You know, we talk in the office often because there are certain things that don't make sense. And, you know, this watch in particular on a bracelet is one of them. Because on a bracelet, it sells for less of a premium than the weight of the gold of the bracelet. And we're seeing more and more things not make sense like that in the market. I won't say the name, but a certain yachting timer in precious metal trades somewhere in the low 20s, and at gold weight, it's worth somewhere in the low 20s.
So you look at this is the kind of artisanally crafted goldsmith
Beautiful
bracelet that Armin's talking about. Back in the 80s, you know, brands like Jaeger-LeCoultre, like Piaget, even some pieces by Cartier were actually handmade on a very low volume basis by people who were extremely hands-on smiths in the artisanal sense. And these things are being melted down left and right in the industry, particularly, I'm going to say, in Midtown Manhattan, in Hong Kong, and in London. And yeah, if you think about this watch for sale on a strap and you think about how much value is tied up in maybe 3 to 4 ounces of gold bracelet, you could never recreate it for its scrap value, but a lot of people don't care about that.
Well, you know, I was just looking at that. You know, the work involved in creating a precious metal bracelet is not to be disregarded in this situation, because you're talking about, you know, I don't want to be hyperbolic when I say hundreds of man hours, but depending on the complexity of the bracelet, you could be looking at 100 plus man hours in terms of forming a bracelet on something like this. When it comes to a piece of jewelry, when it comes to a jewelry watch, I forget the reference, but the Patek Gondola with the pearl bracelet, for example,
yes,
that is an artisanally crafted bracelet, and it's a sight to behold in person. Now, granted, something like that wouldn't necessarily be melted down, but that's the type of interesting jewelry that we're talking about.
But here's the thing, it wouldn't take any less skill to create something like that for a Piaget or a JLC from the 1980s. And so if you think about how long it takes to finish a steel bracelet on a Royal Oak, it's 9 to 11 hours. Now add all of the smithing skills and the polishing, the finishing, the assembly of one of those 1980s gold bracelets, and you realize that this is a mechanical perpetual calendar. So this is even a little bit safer than something that might be 5 ounces of gold, but a quartz movement in a small style. Think like 1980s Panthère.
Or Ebel, you know, some of the Ebel chronos.
1911s.
Yeah, yep.
Raymond Weil, yeah. Like, that's the kind of thing we're talking about now. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but we're going to jump into our chat box now. Sutats is in the box. Miroslav from Europe. We got Jim Millett from the UK. Moto Gunner from Athens, Georgia. 911 Euro from Winter Park, Florida. Scott from Marion, Pennsylvania. We got a local boy. OT from Rome staying up late with us. I appreciate that. Eric Nielsen from Asheville. You're in the show tonight. Rick on Watches. McLauder, Calipsian. We got Herb. We got Frank. Thanks for joining, Frank. We got Rich, Mitch. We got Ty joining in from Boston, Dr. Kevin Moore, always good to see you, our old friend. We got We Are Venom, a good friend and another alumnus of our Collective Conversations. We got David Jens from Frankfurt, and we got Chris Thorne from the UK, another one staying up late with us. Welcome to one and all, and Daniel B. from the Great White North in Canada, watch enthusiast from Italy. Steve 1010, guys, stay tuned. Some of you are in the show tonight. Okay, so one of the challenges we run into right now is that this is not just a US phenomenon. There are some places around the world, like the Middle East, where it's still very common to salvage a watch in its entirety. So Claude Sapphire, who's one of the top dealers and vintage connoisseurs in the world, got his start when he and his father fled the Lebanese Civil War in the 1980s, and he landed in the Dubai Gold Souk, which is still around today. And he was basically smashing gold watches, removing the mechanical parts, and salvaging the gold. And he became a watch dealer when he was about to smash a collectible watch for someone who had pointed at it and indicated he wanted it. And the guy said, no, 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 I want it as a watch. And that blew him away. The idea that someone could want the watch more than the scrap value of the gold. Well, there are still quite a few places around the world where there's not much of a market for the watch. The watch is not very liquid, but gold is liquid everywhere all the time. So there are a lot of watches being destroyed as well, particularly outside developed economies.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting too, there's a lot of, and this is slightly outside of the realm of watches, but with this meteoric rise in gold, I've seen fake pre-1933 gold be tried to get traded.
Okay.
I've seen fake gold bars try to get traded. It's a tumultuous situation. You know, people are getting involved in taking advantage, and people are getting involved in legitimate business. So, you know, if you're dealing in gold, get somebody with a spectrometer? Is that the right word?
Yeah, and you want to be really careful because there is a lot of adulterated gold out there.
Very much.
And let's even keep this in mind. Now, watchmaking gold, by convention, is almost always 18 karat.
Modern day is going to be 18 karat for the most part.
Now, that is 75% pure gold. So let's take a look, and this is just a thought exercise, please don't take offense, but last year I shot a detailed breakdown of the Donald Trump Victory Tourbillon. We've got a picture of it right here. And this was billed as 200 grams of 18 karat gold. So that's about 150 grams of pure gold. At today's exchange rate, like today's, of $4,010, that's easily over $21,000 in gold value, and most of it is in the clasp and the bracelet. At its recent peak of $4,342, that's gold again, per ounce, then this watch would be over $23,000 in retail value of the scrap gold.
And that's provided that is accounting for the 18 karat.
Yes, that is taking the 25% that's copper and other secondaries out of it. You get that 150 grams. That is still a lot of money. Now, if you can imagine watches that are roughly this size and shape from the 70s, 80s, and 90s that have those big gold bracelets and clasps, then you can imagine the temptation, if it's not a major brand or if it's a quartz watch or even if it's a ladies style or if it's a big like 1990s Breitling on a full bracelet, there's a lot of temptation right now to just salvage the metal. Now, of course, the Trump thing might become a political collectible because it's not an ordinary watch in the same sense that he's not an ordinary politician. But if you are talking about, Piaget, Breitling, Cartier, JLC, Bulgari watches from the 80s, 90s, and the 70s, you see what I'm saying about there being a lot of very liquid gold in these watches. So customers for some of those period styles, if you want to sell a 1990s Piaget Chrono Reflex quartz perpetual calendar, there's going to be a lot more interest in the gold than that movement.
Yep, definitely. And that's something that, I wonder if we'll start to see a demand in the watch market for some of these watches due to that. Like, will these be underscored in the market by the value of their gold, and will that take them to a slightly different, and I'm not saying a meteoric rise in any sense of the word, but will that take them a slightly different level above their gold value?
Well, here's what I'm starting to think now. Let's come up with some, let's game plan some reasons why you would not want to melt a watch down, because I think that's where I stand and that's where you stand.
Completely.
First and foremost, just like there is a wholesale and a retail price of a watch, there's a wholesale and a retail price of gold. So if you expect that you're going to quickly melt down gold bracelets and cases and clasps, and you're going to sell that to someone who buys gold for that $4,000 an ounce price, then you're as wrong as thinking a dealer is going to buy your watch for its retail price.
Yep.
That's not how it works.
The dealer has to make money. The dealer, and in gold, especially during tumultuous times in the gold market, a dealer might give himself a 15 to 20% spread on gold weight. And that is, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to say that they disagree with me, but I guarantee it. Please go out and try to sell gold and get even within 10 points. But during these times, dealers have to build in their own margin. Generally, they do make a decent amount on gold, but you're probably looking at a minimum 12 to 20 points.
And I would even go so far as to say the more gold you want to sell, the less they're going to give you per unit.
Without a doubt, that is unequivocally true. And at that point too, you don't go to a small coin guy on the corner in Ardmore. You go to a big gold, you can go to a foundry, you can go to a gold dealer, like a 47th Street dealer who's used to dealing in kilos rather than ounces or rather than grams.
Yeah, and I've had, on Long Island, where I'm from, I've had Met's great Keith Hernandez telling me for decades now to sell my gold to coin galleries of Oyster Bay. I'm sure they're nice folks, but the bottom line is the first time he made that pitch back in like 2009, that commercial's been going for a while. Take a look at how gold has increased in value. Wouldn't you have been better off, honestly, to just keep the watch, even if all you cared about was the value of gold? You go back to the chart we had before, gold is going to consistently go up in value. As soon as you cash in your chips, it's a little bit like Bitcoin. You want to hold, ideally, until you're ready to retire or something like that. But if you can look at all of those inflection points where gold went up, there was someone telling you, some Keith Hernandez, at every point on that chart to sell your gold now. And if you didn't have to, you were 100% justified in hanging on in the long run. Plus, a gold watch can be worn and enjoyed. Even if you did have a purely soulless melt value view of the thing, that's a lot of decades of enjoyment you got out of keeping it in watch form as opposed to bullion form.
The amount of enjoyment is like the main factor, and that's what honestly, that's what bothers me so much about all of this, because it's you're making the decision for somebody else down the line that they're not going to enjoy it, so you're going to melt this down.
Plus, if you just melted your silverware a year ago, you'd have so much more money than if you put your money into gold. I mean, really, silver's gone on quite a run. It's not the price per ounce, it's the percentage gained. Remember that, guys. That's a very important frame of mind when you're actually going to try to get money from precious metals. So now I know a client who bought $1 million worth of gold. Now, he didn't do it by melting down his collection, but he bought $1 million worth of gold. I wish him the absolute best there. But even if you are like melting down the gold and for some reason deciding to keep it, like I said, 1981 to 2025, you were treading water for a really long time with that gold before you made your money back. So I'm just saying, there are no flawless investments. Gold might seem like a great hedge against inflation. The problem is stocks have beaten everything for all time. So if you really just want to make money, put it into an index fund or something like that. Keep your watches. I think there are investments and there are watches, and never has this been more the case than when we're talking about the destruction value of the watch.
Yes, well said.
Please, let cooler heads prevail. I would also say this, sometimes you guess wrong. That watch you melt down today might be some sort of firecracker collectible in 15 years that we all wish we'd had in triplicate, rather than melting the one we had that we thought was just a cheap old timekeeper. Remember that. Sometimes you get caught out by what becomes popular down the line. And, who knows, that 1980s Piaget chronograph in quartz, I don't know, that could someday...
Hey, stranger things have happened.
Timothy Chalamet wears that in like a biopic or something. You never know what could happen.
By the way, the little Cartier Panthers that he wears, they're kind of a vibe. I like it.
He's going to make that happen again, I think so.
Hey, Mick Jagger did it in the 80s. And it looked awesome on him, and now Timothy Chalamet's doing it, and it looks awesome on him too.
Yeah, super skinny guy with like a skinny little watch.
Yep.
Like that could be the man of the future.
It absolutely could be. It is at least a man of the future. We know that already. It's already happening a little bit.
Yeah, the man of the present in the United States is wearing like a Super Avenger and driving an F-350 diesel. But again, times change. You never know. Okay, let's take a look at some of our topics right here. Neil B is saying 2% melt fee. We've got Neil B saying meltdown is usually only 71% gold. Spring bars and screws in the bracelet have to subtract movement near 25 grams. But remember, sometimes there's also a gold weight on the rotor for the movement if it's automatic.
And that very much depends on the watch. There is no formula to plug into a watch of what percentage the movement weighs, what percentage the crystal weighs. It is all different. Shout out to Neil though. Good to see you here, Neil.
Retired and broke, $10,000 to $14,000 2030. The dollar is bad. It's definitely one thought that this is a hedge against inflation. BNS saying, I bought my wife a mechanical Cartier watch in 18K with deployant clasp a few years back for less than its gold value. Eric Nielsen, the Chinese central bank, will slow down their bullion purchases eventually, but gold might still double in the meantime. Then the buying pressure on price will flip to selling pressure, but slower. And Ben 10 is wearing his vintage JLC Duoplan tonight, which is so small that the melt value, even if it is gold, is probably negligible. Time Hill, Milgauss 88, welcome guys. What else going on in the chat? We have Milgauss saying, if you got by when we got off the Bretton Woods system, stocks have not outperformed gold. Well, I'm saying, for the most part, stocks have done pretty damn well. Plus also, I mean, let's be totally honest. When you sell your stock, you're going to get a whole lot closer to the face value of the stock relative to gold, where you're probably, you know, again, if it's just your jewelry and your bracelets you're melting down, you're going to get a wholesale price for that. So what else is going on in the box? Frederick N. Thoughts on Vacheron Overseas Chrono and gold going up in value? Well, you know, gold may ebb and flow, but as a watch, what do we think?
As a watch, I love the watch. I think it's fantastic. I don't expect it to go up in value. You know, I love Overseas. I've been spending a lot of time with Vacheron lately internally. And I've changed opinions on a lot of things. But no, I don't expect it to go up anytime soon. You know, it's a fantastic watch, and its presence is, I mean, it's second to none. It is a presence on the wrist. Oh my gosh, is it gorgeous. Buy it if you love it. Don't buy it for the gold value.
Yeah. The only Vacheron Overseas in gold that's going to be worth more is the 2000V, the 1 year only 100 piece or less ultra thin.
I look for reasonable versions of these very often because I want one to sell. You know, I want one for us to have. I'm dying to see the watch again. I remember seeing one. I'm dying to see it again.
I've seen more brown dial Overseas than 2000Vs. Okay, wrist chats number 2. Brian M. shares a rare for this channel, vintage IWC automatic with Peloton winding system and a quasi pipe hand dial. Very
cool
nice.
Little cyclops too. I dig that.
Really? I mean, I haven't seen that on any, like, very rarely on a non-Rolex. That's an unusual look.
Very rarely. It's super cool though. It almost modernizes it in a way. I like it.
Yeah, that and Panerai among the few Cyclops eye magnifiers that are not Rolex branded.
And that are not protruding from the top of the crystal.
That's a good point too. Underslung.
This one might be actually.
Ben 10 keeps the vintage dress watch theme going with a double crosshair dial JLC from the 1960s. Those looks are pretty sweet.
Black date wheel too. That's sharp.
This is almost a disco volante.
That is sharp.
I like that. Abdul R features an undoubtedly first for this channel, Mercure Pierre Paulin TV jump hour in Germany. Good looking.
Wow, that's fun.
That is a lot of fun. I want to know more about that. Abdul's a regular.
Is that the what do they call that? The sticks, the sound thing?
A striker?
A striker.
I don't think it is.
Or no, I mean the physical thing that they click to sync up the sound with the audio.
Not sure. This is so new to me, I couldn't even say.
That's very cool.
Very, very cool. It's almost like it's Mondrian-esque and at the same time features like a piano key track across the jump hour.
Yeah, yeah.
And
with the color scale and the gray scale.
And a little bit of Atari, I'm not going to lie.
Very cool.
And Tetris.
That wins for fun, I'll tell you.
Well done, my man. Richard G in his Steel Casio A1000 roll with Jeep at White Sand Dunes National Park. Looking good.
Cool bracelet.
Yeah, really. Steel mesh bracelet on a Casio.
Dig that.
And not a G-Shock either.
Yeah, yeah.
Good look. Eric T features his 1916 bought JLC Polaris Geographic with special thanks to our own Jason Main. That's an unusual watch.
Good one.
Send your wrist shots to MondayMailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your pieces on these pixels. All right, rolling out into the evolution of a watch collector now. So let's talk about 3 different levels of watch collecting: absolute beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So absolute beginner, we've all started here. No one starts intermediate, no one is automatically advanced. Start small. This is my advice. Even if your budget is large, in this sense, everyone, regardless of resources, can start from the same point. Armin, why would you want to start small, even if you can make a big splash right out of the gate?
You really don't know what you like. You really don't know what you like to look at. You really don't know what you are able to read, and you don't know what complications you want to use on a daily basis. I mean, there's so much nuance. There's a wide range of what we can like, and there is I don't know, I find most collectors end up with a relatively narrow range of watches that they do like, you know, and does it range everywhere from 36 to 43 millimeters? Yes, it does, but you're gonna end up somewhere in the middle there, and guess what? Your entire collection is going to be within that range. So I think you want to start small because you want to know what feels and looks good on your wrist, and what you use, what complications, whether it's a date, whether it's a perpetual calendar, whether it's, you name it.
What do you like? You may find out that what you like is very different from what you believed you would like. The other thing too is at every level, learning is more rewarding than buying. The more time you put into researching a purchase and becoming part of that community and understanding where the watch comes from, how it's made, the more you're going to enjoy it once you put it on your wrist. It's almost like a watch that comes with a prepackaged set of memories, and memories make our watches most meaningful. And remember, watches rarely gain value, but knowledge always does. Also, the more you have, and that's knowledge again, the more valuable it is. A thoroughly researched watch starts its life on your wrist with a few, I guess, elements of sentiment already, because if you have searched for a watch, there is a great pleasure in the pursuit, and it will be that much special when you attain it. You've
been on the hunt, you know you want this particular piece, and you didn't compromise. And I do think there is something to be said for that, especially in our society of the instantly gratified.
Yeah.
Waiting for that right piece. If you're looking for a vintage piece that you want it to be, the case to be sharp, waiting for the right one and getting the kind of cathartic release of getting the right one. That's awesome.
And whether you're buying new watches, pre-owned or true vintage, you got to remember that you need to leave yourself some margin to make mistakes. So consider try before you buy. A big lesson that we all learn if we buy a watch that's way too big, like that Breitling Avenger Hurricane on my wrist. If you just researched this thing based on photos on sales sites, you might overestimate how well this 50mm watch fits your wrist. Try before you buy is more important for beginners who don't have a previous frame of reference for size, shape, feel, decoration, quality, legibility. And because this is a sensual product, you really have to make sure that the fit and the feel are going to be a match for you.
It is. It's one of those things that's intimate, and it is, different from watch to watch. And I feel like it is a weird type of quote unquote intimacy too, because it's something you're going to look at dozens of times a day, and spend a lot of time with. I mean, it's you're wearing it.
You can always have a bracelet or necklace sized, but with a watch there are some fixed dimensions like the lug, the thickness of the case, end links on the bracelet that are just like set
weight.
Points. Yeah, the weight, is it top heavy, is it well balanced all the way around? So you really need to make sure you know what you're getting into, and by not spending too much and giving yourself some room to mess up, you protect yourself.
Without a doubt. And the weight's critical on something like that Avenger Hurricane too, because if that was steel, it would wear too big.
And you might find out that something like that watch, which is bright light, basically a sort of composite polymer, maybe you don't like the feel of a toy-like watch that's super light. Some people get put off by titanium, ceramic.
Yeah, the Journe Octasport lines fall victim to that every now and then. I think, when people think of luxury, they, you can go one of two directions, right? You can go the gold route, like we've been talking, that dense, that luxurious density on the wrist, that weight. Or you can understand that the pursuit of interesting materials is as luxurious as precious metals, such as the RM route, such as titanium Laurent Ferrier, such as titanium FP Journe.
The other thing too is when you're getting started, let's say you like vintage out of the gate. There's no reason you shouldn't like vintage. You don't have to be an advanced collector to collect vintage. I would not go out and make a big splash with a Patek Philippe 2526 or a Rolex 6062 star dial.
As much as I'd love to.
Yeah, maybe you can afford that, but you also might make a huge mistake because old watches are non-standard and there are various standards of integrity in the vintage watch dealing space. Whereas if you decide I'm going with a Seiko Bellmatic, you might find that's a great fit for your expertise and your budget. And look, if it shows up and it's totally trashed, well, you've protected yourself on some level from too much exposure to a watch that didn't work out.
Yeah, go Seiko Pogue, something that's very researchable, something that even as a novice in getting collected in watches, you can research, you can look at, you can understand the differences in the eras of the release, you can understand what's original, what's not, what's most often replaced, what to look out for. I think actually looking in that direction is a great way of starting.
I would also say, important to remember, but stick to your budget, because I find that there's this sort of sense that the appetite increases with eating. You give yourself space to get a $2,500 watch, which becomes a $3,000 watch, becomes $3,500, becomes $5,000. And these little incremental steps you make as you expand sort of your acceptance of what you can spend, they don't happen all at once, because if they did, you would say flat out no. But watch out for budget creep when you're a new collector.
And my gosh, does it happen. And it happens to a little bit of everybody, whether you're starting off with $150 or you're starting off with $150,000. Yeah. You start doing the mental gymnastics and the mental math of rationalizing to yourself why you should spend more. And if you're just getting into it, you've got time. You have nothing but time. Are things getting more expensive?
Some are.
Some are on a daily rate. Sometimes, yes. I'm not saying that as an investment. Don't roast me too bad.
We are not certified financial planners. We have no license or authorization to
We are
dispense
not
advice
doctors.
and financial services. Yeah, exactly.
But I lost my train of thought entirely, but yes, whether or not you have the 150 or 150,000 to spend, you will do the mental math. Hey, I have this 150, I can probably spend 200. It's more fun to spend time in the budgetary hunt. You get chops in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna really dig through the trenches and I'm gonna find this watch at my budget.
I would also say that the person who jumps in with a ton of money into watch collecting and jumps straight into like spending hundreds of thousands on that's usually the person who burns out.
So that's a really great point, because you want a slow build to a certain point, right? If you start out if your first significant other is a model, then your next significant other, who maybe is not a model, is going to feel subpar.
Or maybe you have a terrible experience because you go for like the person who is like the person of your dreams in the mind's eye, and then you're not compatible on personality or values. There's some sort of conflict over religion and politics. Like sometimes your ideal turns out to be a nightmare. If your ideal is a huge leap of faith or budget, you wind up with the bigger nightmares. Just keep that in mind.
We do find often there is this sort of bell curve in collecting, and it starts on one side, and it's just like the meme, actually, right? You start thinking, hey, these things are really important to me as a collector, and I really like these things, and this is the end of watches that I like. And then you end up in the middle of the bell curve with everybody else saying, hey, I want this. I need a perpetual. I need a dress watch. I need a dive watch. I need the reverso in my collection. I need this. And then as you continue collecting, you gradually end up on the other side of the bell curve, and guess what? It looks so similar to the entry level of the bell curve, because it's ultimately what you like at your core. And that really doesn't change that much as time goes on.
Exactly. So viewer wrist shots number 3, Yandretti, our old friend, shares his vignette diamond dial Rolex Day-Date. We've got Yan scoring again with the rarely seen but much loved Millenary 4101. Steve B stages his Hamilton khaki, the Cars, and the car here, a McLaren MP412C. James T portrays his Christopher Ward Azure sector dial with BMW Alpina D5 B-Turbo. Raymond K dazzles with his 1916 sourced Zenith Day-Fi Skyline skeleton from Valerie at our Newport Beach location. Guys, evolution of a watch collector. Intermediate collector is the toughest phrase to define. The guy that's just getting into watches is a beginner, and that, Oro Montanari is an expert. This is easy. But what about that huge, possibly majority of the watch collector population that falls into the intermediate range? So I think the broadest brush is the right one here. You already have a collection of some nature. You've had time to make mistakes, learn, and recover from those setbacks. People are starting to ask you for advice about how to buy watches. You're becoming that watch guy in your social set. You're a participating member of online or offline watch communities, and both can be great, so don't prejudice either one. Your collecting is shaped more by your knowledge of watch brands than your lack of knowledge of watch brands, i.e. there is more to life than Casio, Tag, and Rolex. You're thinking about indies, high horology, maybe the right kind of micro brand. And I'm going to admit it, I'm still in this group. There's still too much I need to learn and too many watches still on my must-have list. But I also haven't achieved the definitive mark of an advanced collector, which we'll discuss soon. Armin, would you say most watch collectors are in this intermediate space?
Without a doubt. And I think there's a lot of people who are, still kind of in the entry space. I think there's a level of thought process kind of getting into the intermediary and advanced that, quite honestly, not everybody gets to in a hobby, myself included in some of my hobbies. And I think that that's not a bad thing by any sense of the word. But yes, I think, it is probably a majority of long-term collectors in this, because as you do collect, you do start to think of the horological world in a slightly different way. You just kind of have to as you learn more about the nuts and bolts of the industry. And I think that's going to be the difference between the entry level and the intermediate collector, is you have a little bit more insider knowledge.
Yeah, you have more agency in the choices you make for yourself. You're less influenced by others. You have a better idea of the scope of what's out there. So when you're making your choices, you're making the choice from a much more informed place. So these watches should better reflect you specifically and not your influences. And also, frankly, because of the amount there is to know in the watch space, it's very difficult to be an expert. There's a reason why doctors tend to specialize, and you don't go to the same guy for your knee that you go to for brain surgery. They may be equally smart, but there's a reason why people focus on one really idiosyncratic part of the body. And watches are just as diverse, if not more so, based on the sheer scope of what's out there. There's only so many ways to put together a knee. But I'm also going to say that it's important to remember that once you get to the advanced stage, it's not just about budget, and it's not just about the scope of your collection. We're going to get there soon. Let's read from the chat box, see what's going on here. Wicked Witch of the West, Chris, buy a Tudor chronograph. Abdul, and Abdul is a good fan of ours, and I got a couple of my grandfather's watches on both sides in the 30 to 35 millimeter range. I ended up giving them to my wife. We have...
That's a good answer to that, actually. I like that a lot.
Also, Abdul saying jump hour with an ST17 Seagull movement. The dial's like an old TV screen when the channels are closed. Okay, so he's talking about the jump hour watch we just saw on screen.
Cool watch.
That is very, very neat. Mason 1 wearing his Moser Heritage Funky Blue Fume today. We love our Mosers and our funkiness. Dram Bam saying, love my Casio calculator and love my high-end, just like what you like. And Cole Luizzo, Tim, will you be at the watch fair at Ardmore? I will. I will have some hours there during the day. Kevin K, so regardless of where I start, I'll end at an Onyx dial Date 840 in yellow gold. Only you can say for sure.
I love the Onyx dial Date 8. The watch is gorgeous.
Yeah. Neil B saying, still make a mistake for watch size. They look really good and I forget to check the sizes. So yes, you can be an intermediate or advanced collector and still make mistakes on size from time to time. That's why I always say try before you buy, and if you buy remotely, make sure there's an unconditional right to return the watch.
Fun story with this, actually, sizing wise. This is a personal story. I was, 15 or 16, like just getting into what watches were and understanding watches and knowing, hey, I want a watch. You know, I think I had a Fossil. I ordered, wait for it, an Invicta from Amazon. Ooh. Judge me fiercely, please. I didn't know any better. Anyway, the watch came in and it was 52 millimeters. This was my first understanding of watch sizing in this capacity, because I didn't even know to look at this time for the size of the watch. So Neil, I feel you.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
It happens to everyone.
Eric R. sporting the Longuantina Albert today. Love this timepiece. You were the inspiration to chase after it. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad I didn't lead you astray. That's a fantastic watch. That might be the chronograph. And I'm saying that as someone who loves the Patek 5070 and has owned a Duomet. That might be the chronograph, the Albert. Jim Millets in the box saying, keep hitting that thumbs up. I definitely appreciate it. And we've got Junior Johnson saying, I bought some nice clocks lately. Amazing how affordable they are compared to watches. 100%.
A client of mine actually has been sending me the saga of going through getting a custom clock made by a clockmaker, and it was so cool to watch. You know, he would send me, he sent me a couple renderings, and just about a week ago, he sent me the clockmaker in his home, setting up the clock, and he said he spent a couple extra days in the town so he could stop by and check on the regulation of the clock.
That is cool.
And I was blown away by this, and we're talking about the cost of, I mean, significantly below entry-level Patek. I mean, you know, less than half entry-level Patek, in fact. So it's really something, clockmaking, that is, it's lost on a lot of watch collectors. And if you're into horology, spend 10 grand, buy yourself a clock.
A great clock.
A great clock. You know, we actually have a watchmaker who is making custom clocks.
Justin?
Yeah.
We'll talk about
and
that
they're
more in the future.
fantastic. They're very cool.
Okay, so TAC now saying, I'm so in the intermediate category. I don't think I'll ever progress beyond that, but not for lack of trying, just too much to learn and find out. We're going to talk more about that in a moment, but first, viewer wrist shots number 4. Eric Ann of Asheville, he's in the box now, he's on your screen, walking with Jack and Pepper, and his 20th anniversary Omega Seamaster. It is his 20th anniversary, by the way. Jeff S. and his Romain Gauthier, see overlook a riot of matte-painted BMW M car. Giannis M. impresses with his rarely seen AP John Schaefer.
Man.
Oh yeah.
That's a repeater.
That thing is the real deal.
That's a beautiful watch.
Peter navigates traffic with Swatch, the Moon, Snoopy, Omega, and the Bavarian Motor Works. And Kirk K. keeps it premium with The Macallan 25 and Rolex sub on an Everest strap, guys. Keep them coming to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com if you like vintage, at the1916company.com if you like contemporary. Okay, advanced collector is a status that few of us reach, and it can't be otherwise. As a community, we need to reserve this title for a handful of people who have achieved a status bordering on scholarship. This is the realm of experts on a model line, a brand, a style, or an era. So Oro Montanari, an authoritative source under the pen name John Goldberg. We talked about him before, but he's this kind of person. Many of his books are considered definitive in their fields, and Waco described him as the world's greatest watch collector, and I don't disagree. Alternatively, Robert Jan Brouwer, Speedy Tuesday, for example, he's a single series expert who can be described as an advanced collector of Omega Speedmasters. Speedy Tuesday is an institution in the watch community, and more importantly, RJB has created a searchable database of Speedmaster history that enriches the entire Omega watch collector population. William Messina is another advanced collector, and a true one. He has a highly cultivated sense of history and taste that directly informs the kind of watches he creates under the Messina Lab label. And then finally, Kieran Shaker, an example of a hugely focused and passionate collector of independent brands. With an extraordinary amount of insight, he proved as much when he published F.P. Journe, The First 30 Years, the Bible for Journe collectors, that does a better job of collating and curating Journe's history than Journe does. This is the realm of the advanced collector.
It truly is. If you've, again, this is spending your time, spending man hours in research, and not just research, but research in conjunction with the brands. You know, you're in communication with a historian of the brand. You know, you're directly referencing things from their archives. You are involved with them, you're in bed with them, you are talking to them, you have a relationship with them, and this is part of what's difficult to get to that advanced stage.
And if you're someone like James Dowling, who's a Rolex expert, getting close to a brand like that can be a life's work, and for him it certainly has been.
And his work is fantastic.
Yeah, no argument.
Yeah.
And I would say that the time spent was time well spent. But this is the realm of the advanced collector. Now, it's almost like they say, mastery is the ability to teach. Once you reach the point that you can teach, creating a watch, writing about watches, popularizing a certain brand or style or era, then you've achieved advanced collector status. And this is not about budget, and this is not about age or resources. This is really about commitment.
Without a doubt. And, you know, beyond that, this is about collecting for the sake of collecting. You know, advanced collectors aren't worried about investment. Advanced collectors aren't worried about, you know, their quote-unquote portfolio falling. Are they paying attention to it? Potentially, yes. But they're not worried about it in any sense of the word. The collection is more meaningful than the value.
And I think what's important is that all these people are experts, but they've created resources that help lift us in turn to a higher level of sophistication. Without truly advanced collectors of this type, it would be extremely difficult for us to progress beyond those beginner and intermediate stages. And admit it, you're probably reading their references on their respective brands from the very time you get into the space.
The reason that we have the knowledge is because of some of these advanced collectors, and it's remarkable, and it's something that without some of these guys, this information would be lost to the ages and permanently.
And so one last note, the truly advanced collector has the self-assurance to simply ignore any and all peer pressure, hype, and social media momentum. He has no self-confidence deficit. Armin talked about that upslope and the downslope. So the most advanced collectors might be the ones who most earnestly and sincerely wear G-Shock, Swatch, or Seiko on the wrist. It's, for him, more than a beater or a daily driver. On that type of collector, it's a flex.
Yep, without a doubt. And I think too, you know, there's a collector that we have that I would put in the advanced collecting category, and he collects chronos, you know, and he buys absolutely everything. I mean, you know, quartz chronos that are from a micro brand that Tim and I haven't even heard of. You know, he's got two in his collection. So, you know, just
and that guy's probably the Bible for that subject.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's how it goes, guys. You want to become the gospel of whatever it is you really love. That's when you achieve advanced status. Thanks so much to Ethan on the switcher tonight. He did a great job. Thanks to Garrett, who was riding shotgun. Thanks to my co-pilot right here, and thanks to all of you for making the best job in the world possible. And until next time, time out.